Hey, hello friends. This is Ayush, and I have with me today Steve Stetler from Stetler Consulting. I am going to have a hangout today with Steve talking about how IoT is changing the face of IoT technology in the food tech industry. And I'm going to hand over to Steve for a beautiful presentation that he has created for you guys. All along the presentation, we encourage you to ask as many questions, tweet to us, tweet to Steve, or just post it in comments. We look forward to a great hangout today. I just kind of introduce a bit about myself. My name is Ayush. I'm the CEO of Mindbowser. We do a lot of development around IoT, around chatbots, applications, both for wearables, for mobile apps, and web apps. I'm also the administrator of a Bluetooth low energy group on LinkedIn. We have 1500 plus members, and after the webinar, I encourage you all to join in because we really have a lot of discussions going on there. Also, I'm a co-editor of the IoT magazine. I'll again encourage you guys to just Google it up, the IoT magazine. It's posted on Medium, and we again have a lot of content every day being updated there related to IoT. So that's a bit about me as your host, but the man of the hour is Steve. Steve, I would like you to start from here and take it up to our audience.
Very good. Ayush, thanks so much for hosting this and making it happen. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's a really exciting time in the manufacturing space, in particular food manufacturing, and beacon technology is exploding. It's kind of taking the capabilities of GPS satellites, which retail at about $500 million, and turning it into a technology that costs $5 to $50, and now you can put those devices in warehouses, manufacturing facilities, and open up all sorts of capabilities. That's what we're going to be talking about. Just to introduce myself briefly, I have been an independent consultant working in this beacon indoor location space for the last 2 years, but I got involved 4 or 5 years ago. I was senior director for strategy at Qualcomm Retail. Qualcomm, the largest producer of semiconductors for mobile devices in the world. And we spent a huge amount on R&D. We came up with one of the earliest Bluetooth beacons, predated Apple's introduction of iBeacon. And basically, it was very successful and got adopted and applied within Apple's own stores so that they know where you are in the store and can greet you through their apps as you enter. And it got deployed for the Super Bowl and all the MLB stadiums, South by Southwest, Citibank, many places. I left a couple of years ago to start my own business, and I was going to fund it through consulting, bootstrapping the business, and the Beacon Consulting ended up being the business. So it's a great area. I've done a lot of training in this space, and that training turned into a book, 400 pages, with over 10 other contributors, lawyers, talking about privacy, all sorts of great stuff. Enjoyed the process so much, I've continued the interviews that I did to research the book, interviewing the CEOs of many of the most significant beacon technology providers and key players at folks like Cisco and Google and HP. And you can see all of those on our website, which is I've got a very long URL, so we have a short version, which is hhgb.us. So check that out for all sorts of great information. So as far as what we're going to be doing here, we've got an agenda which is talking in kind of a very high-level terms about the vision of what can be done. We'll move fairly quickly on to what beacons are and briefly how they work. And then why would you want to bother with this as an organization focused on manufacturing? So we'll basically run through the key use cases that we're seeing get traction using this technology to make things more efficient and improve safety and compliance and save money. So, we'll finish off with a suggestion in terms of a process of how to move forward and evaluate and adopt the technology, and then a Q&A. So that Q&A, questions are down to you. As you think of any questions, please tweet them, send them to @SteveStatler, and we will be tracking that, and we'll answer your questions. So that is the plan. Let's talk about, just at a high level, what's happening, and it's pretty amazing. We have the digital and physical worlds colliding, and it's creating a huge amount of energy. And what this basically means is that cloud and computing technology that was once confined to very abstract abstract things like accounting can now be applied to the physical world. You can know where everything is in your business, whether that's people, materials, finished goods, tools, and those are great inputs that can drive your business in ways that haven't been applied before. Amazon showed us what that looks like when they applied the web to physical retailing, initially in the world of the web. Think of some of these abstract statements. Think of what Amazon did to retailing, and think what could be done if that was applied to supply chain management and ERP and warehouse management systems. So this is all exciting. People tend to think skeptically about whether or not beacons and proximity and location technology will happen. We'll see a graph in a moment that gives you a sense of how quickly we're moving forward. But the reason why this is going to happen is this technology is going to make a huge difference, and is making a huge difference to Google's revenue numbers. And basically, seeing the adoption of beacons in the outside world is something that has the potential to double Google's revenue. They sell advertising. Advertising gets a lot better if you know where someone is when they're seeing an ad, where they then go to. You can look at conversion, you can do profiling and targeting, and they're putting a huge amount of money into this because they can make a lot of money, and that is opening up lots and lots of opportunities. Let's look at something very specific, which is how many beacons have been shipped over the last few quarters. This gives you a sense of the growth. It looks like a fairly steady increase in Bluetooth beacon shipments, which are these kind of mini GPS satellites. But actually, if you look at the Q2 2015 number, compare it to the Q2 2016 number, you'll see that it's grown by an order of magnitude in 12 months. So there are a vast number of beacons being shipped. There are over 360 beacon startups, and actually now well-established companies like Cisco and Hewlett-Packard who are producing this technology. Apple's into it, Google's into it. And ABI are forecasting 400 million Bluetooth beacon shipments by 2020. So that's a lot of beacons. What are they? Well, the Estimote beacon is kind of this iconic piece of industrial design. If you look at your screens on the right, that's one of their more recent beacons. And traditionally, these have been deployed in retail applications. And that has been the thing that anytime there's a customer experience, these beacons are starting to be adopted because they can trigger offers and alerts when shoppers enter a store and they come into proximity with the beacon. That allows anyone that's developing an app to know where a customer is very precisely. Now, this is not the model that we're going to be talking about today, but it is the model that's bootstrapped this space and kind of caused a lot of the beacon companies to get into the business. But the model that we're interested in is there isn't necessarily a mobile phone involved at all. And the thing that moves is a beacon, and rather than the beacon being stationary, which is what it is in the retail case, the beacon's actually moving. And we're doing asset tracking, and we're tracking a beacon that's in this conventional looking ID tag that might be attached to a member of the production staff. And then we've got beacon receivers. This is traditionally what the phone would be doing, and these are stationary, and they are dotted around the facility, and each of those is measuring the strength of the signal from these little beacons, And if the signal is very strong, you know that the asset is close by. If the signal is weak, you know it's far away. And if you put 3 of these receivers in place, in fact, there's generally a lot more than that, that you can triangulate, and you can basically work out where the asset is that has the beacon attached to it. So at the center of it, it's very simple. It's like the child's game of being told hide and go seek. You're warmer, 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 and the signal gets warmer and warmer. You know you're closer, and then you do some trigonometry, and you can figure out where people are to quite a high degree of accuracy. Sub-meter accuracy is possible. It's tricky, and it gets a bit more expensive. And we can talk more about accuracy in the Q&A if you're interested in that. So, you know, what are the use cases? How is this technology actually being used? And it is being used now. What we're seeing is early adopters starting to implement these use cases. So there are factories with beacons attached to motors, and the vibration of the motors is being, even though the motors may or may not be moving around, but beacons, because they cost $5 to $50, they are a very cost-effective way of not just tracking the asset, but measuring its temperature and its vibration. Typically, beacons have more than just a transmitter. They have these sensors that are very, very low cost that can be read. And Google started to standardize the way beacons transmit this information. You can track whether something has moved or not at a very basic level. And at the root of a lot of these use cases in the manufacturing space is asset tracking. And it's about not losing things anymore, suddenly being omniscient. You can know where every single pallet is within your facility, every member of staff on a real-time basis. So typically, you know, in the past, we've had barcodes and RFID codes, and you've had to scan them or have them pass through special gateways to read the radios. Beacons are like lighthouses, and so you can have this real-time view, potentially generating masses of data. Part of our job as solution designers is to just save the stuff that is interesting. There's a lot of data there. Many other applications, workforce management. No longer do you need to have a manual process of checking in. You can have very accurate views of when someone entered the facility, if they've got the tag on, where they're spending their time, and start to optimize movements around the warehouse, knowing how much time people are spending moving from one location to another, and also knowing whether they are in the right place at the right time, the wrong place, potentially if you're separating organic, non-organic, if you've got toxic substances that are used or hazardous substances that are used. Then safety is one of the applications that we're seeing being driven in the soft drink space, where they want to know that certain people have been trained before they enter into a certain area. That sort of policy can actually be rigorously enforced now, and you can know who is in touch with what. And one of the applications that I'm most excited about is FDA compliance with food traceability regulations. So I was talking to one industry pundit recently, and they estimated that 90% of food manufacturers are not fully living up to their obligations in terms of the record keeping to track how foods are processed in their facilities. And if you think about if one has real-time knowledge of where people are, the tools that they're using, and where the raw materials are going, and where they're processed, then a very manually orientated log keeping process can be fully automated, and so it can be a lot more reliable. And so there's many advantages to that, not just mitigating the risk of finding that you're not in compliance when there's a problem, but also as a food supplier selling to retailers, showing that you have the state-of-the-art method for tracing and tracking and record keeping. I think puts you at a level that hopefully gives some competitive advantage, and so an ROI in terms of winning new clients and keeping clients will help to justify things. So, this is all interesting. How do you actually proceed? And as a consultant, what we've found is before you can do anything, there's some learning that's required, and different levels of learning for different people. Communicating with executives, communicating with operational staff to figure out where is the best place to start. Where can we get the biggest return on our investment? Doing everything at once is clearly not viable, and so some planning there. And then some feasibility. So at the essence, this technology is very simple, but the devil is in the detail. And so it's important to do a proper feasibility study, figure out who the right vendors are. As I said, 366 vendors in a database that we helped create of all the players in this ecosystem. They have different strengths and weaknesses. Then ultimately, how do you integrate this new beacon technology into the existing systems, or maybe a refresh of your ERP systems? And it's important to have best of breed, and just because you're buying beacons from one technology vendor doesn't necessarily mean that you need to buy everything from them. And so figuring out the right strategy, the way to integrate them, and then doing that phased deployment is the way to go. So those are my kind of initial prepared remarks. Beacons are like Lego bricks. The essence, they're very simple, but you can build amazing things. I'm sure when the Lego brick was invented, the inventor didn't realize that replicas of whole cities and devices would be built out of them. And that's what we're finding with beacons. We go in and we have this simple thing of knowing where everything is can translate into all sorts of changes, culturally, business, that can really improve things and be very exciting in an area that is very critical to our economy. So I hope that has been some food for thought, and you can find out more about Mindbowser, the IoT magazine that they curate. And if you go to Statler Consulting, you'll find a white paper on this subject, as well as a lot of resources in terms of pointers to databases with vendors and interviews with a lot of the players in the Beacon ecosystem. So if you have been listening, thank you very much, and do feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think that's been a wonderful, crisp, and clear, start to food technology and how Internet of Things can really help build food technology. I really liked, in fact, the comparison that you did between Lego when it started, and now what you can build out of Lego. I have a kid who is like 3 years old, and she's like building, I think, most amazing things with Lego, which we were when we were children, we could just never think about it, kind of a thing. And there's so many toys, so many variations, so many available currently. One more thing I'd just like to mention here is for the audience that in case you want to read more elaboratively and you like something to hold in the hand, then Steve's book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Beacon System, is also a good start. To really go through, and it is again written just like in a very crisp manner, right to the mark, and it can be a good start as well if you want to understand about the beacon system. So, Steve, I have some questions coming in here, and I would like to go right there. One person has asked, how can we tackle range-related issues in BLE sensors? And in fact, I would add that this is one of the most commonly asked questions, even to us as well. Like, people have all sorts of expectations, and they really, get confused about how, the balance between the range and the accuracy can be managed. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a really interesting question. And generally, range isn't an issue, but there are issues that relate to it. So Bluetooth beacons, you can generally pick them up between, say, around about 70-meter range is kind of a good theoretical range in perfect conditions. But of course, we don't live in a perfect world. But range really isn't the issue. There have been higher range products that go further. And the Bluetooth standard, the latest version, Bluetooth 5, is quadrupling the theoretical range. So you're going from, say, 100-meter theoretical range to 400 meters of range. But actually, we're not using beacons to transmit a lot of data. We're using them to measure the signal strength. And so in practical terms, you'll want to have the beacons a lot closer to the receivers that are measuring the signal strength. And that distance and the density of the receivers is a key part of this feasibility study that we look at. We work with our clients to figure out, how accurate do you need? Generally, everyone wants very, very accurate, but there's a cost to that in terms of more density. And also, there's huge variation in manufacturing environments. Some environments are kind of clear, others have a lot of metallic equipment, which can result in signals bouncing around. And so that's where you need to look at the environment and figure out what the right strategy is in terms of the number of receivers that are going to be able to track the beacons to the level of accuracy that you want.
Okay. Right. One other question that I had coming is, which sensors are most commonly used currently in food processing? I mean, of course, it's a ever-evolving industry, but some of the most common sensors, if you had something on the mind, that these are like,
Sure.
just right away people are using and getting excellent results.
Yeah, well, and I've been focusing on Bluetooth beacons, but we actually look at a much broader palette of tools and techniques, and really a lot of the beacons that have been used in manufacturing more broadly have been ultra-wideband beacons. And so certainly car manufacturing has seen significant adoption of ultra-wideband because their products are really expensive, and if you have the production lines stopping, that can be incredibly costly. The challenge with ultra-wideband is it's very accurate, but also historically, at least, it's been quite expensive. The prices are coming down, and so that is changing. But Bluetooth beacons have been breaking through as a technology into food because of that lower cost. And if you're dealing with fizzy drinks or any product, the margins are smaller. And so Bluetooth as a lower cost technology is one of the technologies that can work alongside technologies like RFID, which even at $5 a beacon, you don't want a beacon on every cardboard box of product that's shipping out the door. So RFID and Bluetooth can work together. Then you look at the different vendors, and that's where it's changing very quickly. So there are vendors like Blue Vision who have probably got a head start in this space, I would say. Good quality product and working with Google. And then you've got other players that have entered this market, like Contact.io as a beacon vendor, who have now introduced, and they are a very high volume vendor of beacons, very strong in Europe, and they've introduced products. And Gimbal, so there's many different vendors and different products with strengths and weaknesses, but hopefully that gives you a sense of this progression to this lower cost technology and some of the vendors that are playing in this space.
Cool, yeah. And what do you see as the future trends that are coming up in BLE? I mean, of course, it's you mentioned in your graph that, and that was so amazing to see. The numbers have just like quadrupled or more within 1 year. So, what do you see is the biggest disruptor coming up, and what are the future trends that you foresee? In fact, I would like you to maybe make it in two parts. One like the short future, and one maybe the long-term future. How do you see all of this evolving out?
Well, there's a lot of trends. One is there's some, one is that people that just sold beacons are now selling beacon solutions. So I think beacons are such a commodity that what we're finding is that the folks that entered the market with just a bare bones beacon product are now morphing into solution providers, and they're gravitating into other areas. Second trend is there's consolidation. Just in the last week, Gimbal got bought, Blue Vision got bought, Gimbal merged with an advertising tech company. Blue Vision got acquired by a HID, a very large specialist in conditional access systems. And so that consolidation, we're seeing big companies get into it. That's another trend. So just in the last 5 weeks, Cisco, Meraki have opened up API access to the beacons that they've been shipping for the last 2 years, integrated into their Wi-Fi access points. And so suddenly, what was a Wi-Fi access point, you've installed it, and now, 1 month ago, suddenly it can monitor the beacons that are in your environment. And more and more manufacturers are looking at Wi-Fi as a way of enabling tablets on the shop floor and barcode scanner network access. And they probably didn't even think that they were installing Bluetooth infrastructure, but it's now available. Other kind of longer term trends are beacon networks. So there's very broad networks of beacons, less interesting for manufacturing, but this is what Google are doing. Their kind of mid-range plan is essentially having a fabric of beacons that blankets everywhere, so that they have a much better sense of where you are when you see one of their adverts, and when you click on it, where did you go? So that's a longer range trend. And then, if you look at the standards, there's a lot of speculation, which I can't talk about specifically, but basically the beacon technology is going to get a lot more accurate. So we're going to significantly increase the accuracy of beacon technology, which is great for the kind of applications that we're talking about. Although you don't necessarily need sub-meter accuracy to figure out whether someone's in the break room or on the production line, or whether they've arrived at work. It's certainly, there's always cases where you want more accuracy, and there's stuff happening that's going to get a lot more accurate.
Right. In fact, that's happening right today, I would say. I mean,
Yes.
I am currently, to share, I'm currently working on a product just doing that, to be able to accurately track people, track employees or workforce within an area, and be able to know who's where, create a heat map, and all of that stuff. And you know what? One of my observations towards this whole movement would be that Apple itself is making a big push, making us switch on Bluetooth all the time by removing everything from our, all the jacks from our phones and computers. So it's like, you have to start keeping your Bluetooth on all the time if you're listening to music, or if you are doing any, we're slowly moving towards a world where just like today we have Wi-Fi on the phone or on device all the time. It would be like, people keep their Bluetooth on all the time, and that could be a big advantage eventually moving forward, because that's the biggest deterrent currently the early adopters have faced.
I agree, and Bluetooth low energy is called low energy for a reason, and there isn't actually a good reason for turning it off. And if you've got an Apple Watch, then it has to be on. So this, or a Samsung Watch. So I think wearables is going to drive that. And whilst that doesn't directly affect manufacturers, what it does is it feeds into this ecosystem. It essentially means there's going to be more investment, and investment in beacon technology and retail actually can benefit logistics, manufacturing, supply chain, just because it brings down costs. It makes the ecosystem richer. So I think that's a very relevant trend that you've flagged.
Right. I have one more question that just came up. From your experience, can you tell me top 3 successful case studies which have done beacon implementation to improve productivity and efficiency? I mean, I know 3 would be a large number to ask right off the bat, but can you point out a few, I would say at least, case studies which have done beacon implementation to improve productivity or efficiency?
Well, I I remember talking to one of the big soda manufacturers about application for safety. So so that example that I mentioned there is one. I think it is actually early days in terms of it. There may be people that have done the FDA food safety piece, but I don't think it's happened yet. I think it's about to happen. I'm certainly working on a project at the moment with early adopter innovator in this space, but I believe that we're on the cusp of that changing very quickly. I think there's a bunch of implementations where people have been using beacons for asset tracking in hospitals. So there's a large number of hospitals that are figuring out if they can get patients to the right place at the right time, on time, then they can save money and not have expensive doctors and staff waiting. And also their equipment is expensive, and so tracking where that is. Some of the beacon manufacturers have driven most of their revenue growth on asset tracking because, how many beacons do you need in a store? Well, you need, 100 or 200, maybe 500. But how many beacons do you need to track packages? So one of the biggest success stories, and again, the name's confidential, but is major logistics companies that are attaching beacons, not to every parcel, but to parcels that are critical, where temperature is a factor, or just knowing exactly where it is a factor. So I can tell you that millions of beacons have been shipped to implement that particular use case that has delivered efficiency for the investors in that project.
Right. I think it's still evolving, and I think it's like early days of internet. I usually
Yeah,
compare it with that. So it's like
yeah.
early days of internet or 2005, and you're thinking, would people really carry mobile? Would these apps be really useful? So
Yeah, I
it's something
mean,
like that.
I would say we are, to use the Geoffrey Moore framework, we are in the area of, we've gone past the innovators and we now have the early adopters. So there are, the example of BMW's production line with ultra wide band used to track the location of tools and work in progress. That's in production now. It's Siemens with the integrator, it's live, and it works really well. There are examples that are in production now where motors are being monitored with beacons, because it's just a lot cheaper to do it than the other equipment. So we're not at a point where it hasn't been done, and you kind of need to look at each use case to say, well, which ones have been done already and which ones are just being rolled out now. But fortunately, a lot of this technology has matured in the retail space and been deployed at most of the CVSs now have beacons in. There's tens of thousands of beacons have been shipped to retail stores by Shopkick, who sold their company for a huge valuation based on knowing exactly when customers enter the store in a way that couldn't be done before. So it is early days, but it's not. We're not talking about theory. It's actually happening. People are using it. They're deploying it. They're making savings now.
Right. I agree. I agree with each part of it because I'm in the industry myself, fortunately, and
Very
I
good. Yeah.
enjoy the challenges and the opportunities that the challenges offer, because each challenge is kind of an opportunity if you can try to solve it. So
Indeed.
these are exciting times, and I believe as I conclude this session that we may converge again for another such session, talking about about what has happened between the last time we had this and now. So I look forward to have another session with you soon, and that's something I'm requesting on behalf of all the audience that
Very
you can
good.
take out some time. And for the audience, guys, like you see all these links here. Feel free to get in touch with us if you have any requirement for any development. You can get in touch with me. If you have any requirement for any consultation, for any specific advice, you can get in touch with Steve. And we are always here for IoT and for BLE. We do that all the time, so we're more than happy to assist you. Thanks so much, Steve. I'll converge here, and I hope you enjoyed the session as well.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Thank you, Ayush. I really appreciate you hosting it.
Thanks, Steve. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.